In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking, with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hey there. Hello, 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 hello. Greetings, one and all. Today, we are coming at you, coming to you, speaking with, talking to, never talking at, but talking to you live and direct. Shout out to Aaron B in the building. We got Practitioner in the building. We got J Bones in the building. And even Mr. Awesome. It can't get any better, folks. I mean, it's I challenge you. I challenge you. This is the best thing that could possibly happen to you, ladies and gentlemen, is to be here with us right now having this conversation. Shout out to you, shout out to you, shout out to you indeed. So I'm back in the Bay and I'm going to get back in my routine. Having said that, several things have been going on lately that have brought the topic of power to mind. Whether or not you are someone who has power or someone who does not have power, someone who's interested in power or understands power. Fact is, you have to deal with power insofar as you're a human being, you're a social animal in a society. You're going to have to contend with the fact that power exists, perhaps even create or have your own power base or base of influence or whatever it may be. It's something that we have to deal with. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about what this strength thing is, as opposed to power. What is the best way, therefore, to get to this power or deal with this power, understand this power game? But one of the things that was occurring in the background, besides the fact that I've been studying several autobiographies of Joseph Stalin, talk about power and craziness and power wielded for a very long time. And that's absolute power wielded for a very long time. However, the Joe Rogan Saga, ladies and gentlemen, the Joe Rogan Saga brings something to mind. Joe Rogan starting his podcast with Brian Redband back in the day, just chilling around with the laptop, okay, messing around. Didn't quite think that there would be then be the subject of a press briefing at the White House, right? That kind of a thing. But the Joe Rogan story teaches us something, which is the best way to get sustainable power is to influence people through your strength. Your best power base are those that admire you for your strength. Now we're going to talk about the difference between strength and power. We're going to break it down a little bit. We're going to see if we're making sense, and we're going to see that there are several through lines, several stories here that connect, and we'll see why they connect and how they connect. We shall put the hypothesis to rigorous check, ladies and gentlemen. I think I just dropped my pen. There it is. So, how's everybody doing in the house tonight? J Bone says, nice jacket. Dr. Thunder says, hey, salute. So, salute to you indeed. Okay. Get the likes up. Get the likes up. Indeed. Make sure you like, share, make sure you subscribe if you have not as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is it then? What are we saying? We're saying something that there's something as strength and there's something such as power. And we're going to create a dichotomy between these two things in order to understand how to contend with and deal with power. Because you see the kind of influence that Joe Rogan has and the reason why it's so sustainable and robust is the key word there, is because it is something that comes from facing the music and increasing your strength. Now, Joe Rogan, he's physically strong. He is a rather determined person. He always talks about discipline and all those other kinds of things. His following follows him because of that. Some admire him as well. He's an inspiration. So the fact that he's able to stand up to all the critics so far suggests that he must be built. The whole Joe Rogan power base, that is, because it's not just him, right? It's the millions of people and the fact that he's a contender in the marketplace. But that power base is based on a certain kind of strength, not based on some kind of authority given to Joe Rogan from above. Now, does that make sense, Dr. Thunder? Okay. I know I may be rambling on here, but we're going to, you see, I busted out the little pad and we're going to try to sketch it out. We're going to try to make it make sense. But basically, rather than getting authority or power from on high that is bestowed upon you, if you get power by influencing people through the development of your strength, it is more robust over time. So goes the idea, right? Perhaps. So let's say we have this thing called strength and we have this thing called power, right? Let's say we have those things. And let me see here. What do I have here? Let me check. So far, it's sharing just fine, it seems. Let's go ahead and make a couple of changes here. Just so we can see properly. If over here we have something called strength, and over here we have something called power, and somehow we know they're kind of related. Somehow we understand that there is a mechanical sense of it. You know what I mean? Like these are mechanical terms. You think about the strength of steel, you think about the force and the power. You think about horsepower, for example, in a vehicle. Okay. But we're going to try to demarcate certain things here, ladies and gentlemen. And shout out to Mr. Awesome says, is power granted the true power? Yes, that's what we're about to find out. Well, it is not very robust. However, it could be authority, right? What you're talking about is authority, because authority is going to be on the power side of this thing, not on the strength side of it. So, strength, on the strength side, I would write down internal. And over here, I would write external. And this is for the purposes of our abstraction here, ladies and gentlemen. What do I mean by that? Okay, when we talk about the strength of something, when we talk about strength of will, strength of character, the strength of the steel, intention, right? The compressive strength of the piece of concrete, the strength of the muscle. You're talking about something which is inherent, intrinsic, or within the internal workings of the thing in particular, right? Would we agree? Can I get a 1 in the chat if that makes sense? When we're talking about strength of the steel, the strength of the concrete, the strength of will of the person, the strength of the muscles, it is the case that it tends to be something endemic, intrinsic. It's in there. The strength of the wood is in the wood, if you will, right? So when I say, oh, you can use your strength to influence people, that then will create a sustainable power base, we're trying to get clarity as to what these words mean here: strength, power, and what have you. Shout out, shout out, shout out, ladies and gentlemen, in the building. So, how is strength developed? Does anybody know how that is developed? Can we say a couple of things about it, perhaps? And maybe we'll find something that is essential, something that is vital, something that is fundamental, something that is basic to the formation of strength. Again, the strength of your muscles, for example. What causes your muscles to get stronger? Kettlebell. Kettlebell, according to Joe Rogan. Yeah, so you go. So one of the things that is inspirational about Joe Rogan is the fact that he has physical prowess. Taekwondo champion a couple of years in a row. Does the kickboxing thing. Then now black belt in jiu-jitsu, MMA, aficionado type. The thing about the kettlebell, what does the kettlebell do to your muscles? What does the dumbbell do to your muscles for them to get stronger? It beats them up, right? So on this strength side, we'll say that, strength comes from, and we're going to use a word here just to kind of capture all that beating up, all that tempering, all that, diamonds are made in pressure and high temperatures and whatnot. We're just going to call it hardship, right? We're going to call it hardship. That this strength thing tends to come from the hardship. The straining of your immune system, the straining of your muscles, the straining of your nerves, the straining of your skills in order to hone them and they get better. The opposite is the atrophy. The opposite is the atrophy, ladies and gentlemen. So, but on the other hand, when it's this, like the power question, the external thing, and also within the physical realm, because Mr. Awesome says strength tends to be something within the physical realm, and maybe we're talking about something, but there's strength in the physical realm, like the strength of the steel, but there's also power in the physical realm, which is the ability to move things and how quickly you can move them, right? What is 1 horsepower? Has anybody ever told you what horsepower is? You just hear horsepower, and it's like, well, what exactly is that? If you tell me 100 miles per hour, 10 feet per second, I can kind of imagine that. I'll say, okay, it has something to do with motion. This thing is covering this amount of space in this amount of time. Okay. But when you say horsepower, what are you talking about? You see, well, power has to do with the ability to move a force through a distance. Basically, it's 500 foot. Okay. 500 pounds, 1 feet every second. It's moving 550 pounds of force through 1 foot every second. But anyways, it's the ability to move things that are out there. This ability to influence other things within the realm of the social animal that we're talking about. Well, then, yes, it is the ability to influence and for your word to be law. So it can come from things such as authority. And what is authority? Okay, we know what this comes from. Okay, comes from a collective. It comes from society, the norms and whatnot. Authority. It could also be force. There could also be, let's say, money. These things allow you to move things that are outside of yourself. However, within yourself, the strength of character, the strength of will, the strength of the bonds within the molecule are things that are intrinsic, and they can be developed by exposing the molecule, exposing the muscle, exposing the human being to shocks, external shocks out there. So let's go back to why strength influences people. Because again, I'm saying, hey, the most sustainable way to have a power base and this most sustainable way to hold on to power and do the most that you can do is to wield influence through your strength. And this strength can be developed. It's not some static, fixed thing. And then we talked about how it gets developed, which is putting yourself through the ringer, putting yourself into the fire. So you will find then that you're not going to be in the fire alone. Why? Okay, so let's see. You might not be into antique furniture or something like that, or you might not be into tables in particular. But the thing is, if you see a table made with, rickety plywood that is not particularly strong, you don't care if it gets thrown into the fire. But when you look at a strong oak leg table, solid, doesn't move, okay, strength has utility. You're going to feel something about that table being thrown in the fire. Like, hey, that's useful. And it's not an entirely selfless thing that you feel for the table, for that strong oak table. And you say, hey, that's useful. It's not an entirely selfless thing. It's selfish. You're saying that thing is of use, right? That thing is of use. I admire the strength in that thing. I could use the strength in that thing. Hence, I'm going to join that team. So the thing about it is this. The habit of sticking your head out or pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries with whatever the power that might be is, right? Getting in that habit of doing it little by little by little, right? In the case of Joe Rogan, it's not like it was a plan. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to subvert certain things by starting a podcast. It's like, no, he just kept on saying what he wanted to say with the kinds of people. Shout out to Eminem. I don't know which particular song is this, but I'm only bringing you things you joke about with your friends inside your living room. That song. I'm like a head trade to listen to. Which one is that? But anyways, the point is peeling back the curtain and listening to a conversation like a conversation you would have, right? But having it in public and just saying what you're going to say and then taking the attacks, right? Many people go through saying what they're going to say, but not all can take the attacks. If you can go through saying what you're going to say and sustain the attacks, you are going to have a very solid power base that is more robust, that will last longer than someone whose authority is given from somewhere else, some other person above, some other person one level above in the one level above in the simulation. So that path which says, hey, that looks safe, the path that looks safe is the path of like, oh, well, I'm not going to stick my neck out. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay away. Okay. I'm going to follow the rules. Okay. Now, that actually doesn't give you any power, but that's definitely one way of contending with the power structure as it is. So that's one way. And it feels safe, but it's not really safe. Okay. Because for you, it's 0 or 1, right? 1 is okay, they're happy with you. And then 0 is when they decide to, chop you off. So going out there, the Joe Rogan style, the scout style, the style of staking your claim every step of the way so that you see what you can withstand. Because guess what? Joe Rogan now is right there speaking, and on the other end, you have big companies and the White House and every other people speaking. He's able to stand there because every step of the way he has built his strength in that regard. It's not a fake stance. Hence, it's not just something that a balloon that just got pumped up artificially and then it can be popped because it was real, because it was tested, because it was in the open. So, an open, real, tested development of your strength will cause people to be in awe and admiration and all that good stuff that we human beings tend to do, and mimicry and all that kind of stuff. And you will coalesce around you. You will have around you this particular power base as a result of people whom see your strength and say, hey, that's a good oak table. We're not going to throw away that oak table just because you have some weird policy that every table will be red and round. No, that's our best table. Shout out, shout out, shout out. And by the way, I see K Polymath in the house. You owe me some super chats. You're not super chatting, you're just over there talking about you're like Mr. Awesome. Salute. Okay. So we talked about the internal things. So, what are some of these internal things that we can develop on the strength side of the ledger? You develop these internal things by putting certain aspects of ourselves through the ringer. Okay. A skill is a very important one because, there's things like, strength of will and strength of character and uh, discipline. But skill also, that thing which is endemic inside internal skill is a strength. And a skill will also develop your ability to be disciplined. It is, after all, also called a discipline, right? Developing that skill and thwarting authority, not being a sheep. It's like developing yourself internally and not being a sheep. You're going to end up developing a power base because of the strength that you're bound to develop by putting yourself through the hardship. After all, we all agreed that on the left side there, on the strength side, that is internal and it's about hardship. We have power over that side more. We have more agency. We have the ability to change something there. And it also turns out that that is the only way to actually have a robust power that is not granted to you on high, some kind of authority way, whether it be some kind of legal or political authority that you may have been granted that could be yanked away. FU money is another way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mr. Awesome, $5 super chat. Say we love to flex, and it seems as if them vex. Send them an email or a text. Tell them watch them moat. Watch them moat. Shout out, shout out, shout out to you. He says, I'm going to receive a lot of value from your channel, sir. Thank you. I've added your book playlist. Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Shout out to Taboo Smash in the building as well. Also a great supporter. Also a great supporter of the cause. So yes, making the claim that developing your inner strength is the best way to actually have a sustainable power base. And let's demonstrate it by more traditional forms of power. If this is true for you as an individual, then it has to be true for governments, right? Is it the truth that the governments that are the... Anyways, let's put it this way. Look, when you are Caesar or Napoleon, a big part of the reason, or even Alexander, right? A big part of why people follow you and why you have the base that you have is because you take a lot of risk. You fight in the front a lot. You're not one of those, you're not an armchair general. And you're not a general from the rear either, for the most part. That's not how you make your name. That's not how you lead the people. This kind of putting yourself through the hardship is a strength which leads to the admiration. And those are more sustainably powerful regimes than those who kind of BS their way in or BS their way out, or can be bought in or bought out, selected in or selected out. So to speak, ladies and gentlemen, so to speak. Okay? So even in that realm, it is best to actually know your strength by constantly testing your strength, building a power base based on the fact that your strength, and people see you being courageous. People see you putting out a signal out there, right? That is not virtue signaling of a cheap sort. Virtue signaling of an expensive sort is the kind of hardship, is another kind of hardship that we're talking about. The kind of hardship that makes you strong, that then gives you a better power base. The kind of hardship that you immediately see where the borders of the enemies are and whom they are, and the people whom are going to come for you. Okay, the people whom are going to come for Dr. Thunder in Elle magazine, for example, because he goes out there and he says something. Now he sees a particular area there lit up. Says Elle magazine. It's like, okay, Elle magazine, there's this particular writer, they've written something about me. And I can sustain that level of attack. This part is really key here because this is the whole tactical part of it. And let me say it again, and I'm going to ask for a 1 in the chat if it makes sense. Basically, putting himself out there, now he knows he can attack, he can sustain that level of attack. And the fact that he can sustain that level of attack shows the robustness and resiliency of whatever project he's embarking upon. And then he moves to the next level, checks that out. And the fact that he can do that, just the fact that you can lift up a 25 after lifting a 15-pound dumbbell, and now you're lifting 40-pound dumbbells, that's the idea. What kind of damage can you take at a certain level? And then you take it and you shake it off. You take damage at the next level and you shake it off. There is no other way that this inner strength is built. And as such, no other way for you to actually have that sustainable power base. Shout out to Dr. Thunder in the building. Says support Ike. I'm a heavyweight. Yeah, a little fluffier these days too, coming from Ghana, but I'm getting back in my routine, including my diet and all that stuff. But definitely enjoyed myself out there in the West Africas with the foods. Support. He's a heavyweight. I don't have FU money, but I have FU tenure. Okay, tenure is another kind of is another route which is not outside this scheme that we've just drawn. What I'm saying is basically this same scheme can explain the tenure thing. It's like, well, we're going to test you. We're going to put you through a particular level of rigor. And then we're going to you're going to prove to us that you should be left alone as a child, to be free, to say what you want, to explore, for the shackles to be removed, right? So goes the theory anyways. And then I'm sure there's a whole bunch of political stuff that may go on. But no, not for Dr. Thunder. Dr. Thunder promises us that he's not an affirmative action tenure pick. Oh, man. That's not nice. Like, oh, man. Just, indeed. So When I say, hey, the best way to get a sustainable power base is by influencing people through your strength. Okay. Because if we have over here on this side, on the power side, if we add influence, that's where you're getting your juice from. And this influence needs to be gotten by people openly seeing you develop your strength, whether it be skill or strength of character in this particular case. Strength of character, because you're going to have to say things that are against the popular narrative. And then you're going to develop this particular strength by sustaining attacks. There is no other way to develop strength, we have already seen and agreed, other than sustaining attacks. It's a strange little thing about complex systems of all kinds, of which biological systems are an example. These systems actually need to get attacked for them to actually get better. That's how they get their information. That's how they know what the shape of the environment is. Okay, cool. Well, we touched the stove. We don't touch the stove anymore, right? We lift up this level of weight until it gets, comfortable for us, and then we go to the next uncomfortable one, and on and on and on. Otherwise, we atrophy. This is the way, whether it be in your business, whether it be when it comes to your employee life, how to deal with your public relations and all that kind of stuff. This principle works. It is the only way. It is the safest way, the most robust way. You know what? I remember, and let me say this again. Let's say you have two people, okay? One guy, right? He's a COO. He's a COO in some online shopping company. Okay? And Mr. COO pulls in like 400 grand a year. Steady, drip, drip, drip every month, gets paid, and then he gets paid a bonus, all that kind of stuff. It's a seemingly steady system, right? That's the seemingly safe path. But then there's another person, he owns a taxi business. He owns a taxi business. And there's on seasons and there's off seasons. And there's sometimes when he switches from taxis to limo, sometimes when he switches from taxis to bus to take people up to the ski slopes. So his money's always going up and down like this every year, every month, every quarter. But he's still pulling about 400 grand a year, right? Which one is more sustainable is the question. Is it Mr. COO with his constant drip, 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 drip every month? He gets that. Or is it the guy that is out there in the wilderness juggling party buses, limos, taxi business, and maybe some Uber cars? Which one is more sustainable? So put a 1 if you think Mr. COO is actually more sustainable. Put a 2 if you think the Mr. Uber, I own limousines, I own buses, I own taxis, I do this stuff, my income is all over the place like this every year. I bobbing and weaving. I'm always bobbing and weaving. Whom will last longer? Well, statistically, the person whom is in the chaos lasts longer. Right? Why? Well, the guy, the COO, is either he makes 400 grand, what's the other alternative? Or he makes 0. It's either he's hired or he's fired. Okay? The guy that is bobbing and weaving between this, that, and the other has 2 things going on for him. Number 1, it is not a single stream of income. Party bus money versus ski slope money in the winter, different things, right? Also, he's learning the skills of being able to withstand damage in the market. In other words, Mr. COO is good until, right? until some shock comes and shakes him off. But the person whom is already on the surfboard, it's easy to see, right? If you're already on the surfboard, you're going to be able to ride the waves better than someone who is on a life raft and gets kicked off the life raft. That is the idea here, still with going out there and developing your strengths by facing the hardship, and that's how you grow. It's the same message I just gave there, saying that Mr. Uber guy, and not that everybody should do that. No, CEO path is fine. It's just that there are trade-offs in life. There is no perfect situation. Mr. COO is more efficient for a given time. He focuses on one thing. He gets that money in. He doesn't have to worry about all this other stuff. It's not a lot of wasted energy, not a lot of all this crazy scouting activity going on. Okay. But what he gains in efficiency, he loses in longevity and robustness. What Mr. Juggler and entrepreneur, and I'm doing 50 things and I do them well, by the way. I'm comparing two competent people, not just some entrepreneur out there, right? Well, he loses efficiency, but then he gains longevity. He's going to be around doing something for a long time because he's checking out, testing the walls, bumping into things. He's not in a comfortable life raft. It's not 0 or 1 for him. It's always a wave. That is the idea. What keeps you here for a long time is often very different from what you might think it is. You might think let me just go into the safe room here. Let me just say what is expected of me to say. Let me not push the envelope vis-a-vis the powers that be and the speech that we are allowed to utter in public, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just go along to get along. Shout out to Kwame Brown. Let me just go along to get along. Well, the thing is, that is actually not as sustainable as you think. What is actually more sustainable is to step by step, every step of the way, say 5 pounds worth of stuff and deal with that. And then say 10 pounds worth of stuff and deal with that. And then say 15 pounds worth of stuff and deal with that. Building your strength at every level as you go along. Gathering an army of people whom admire that the same way they admire a good, well-made piece of furniture or whatever it may be. And that admiration is very powerful. Okay? Now, Mr. Awesome just said something. Right? Exposure therapy. In other words, when there is an underlying principle that is deep enough, fundamental enough, foundational enough, meta enough, you're going to find it in many different places. And this idea of the trade-off or what you get when you go into the danger and that there is no other way, you'll see it in many other places. So yes, indeed, exposure therapy is another way of looking at this. The only way to get over the fear, the phobia, is to systematically expose yourself to it level by level by level by level. Same thing with dumbbells, same thing with a particular skill, same thing with any kind of thing that you're trying to develop. Same thing with your immune system. It needs to be attacked at different levels. If you keep the baby in a sterile environment, it's actually not good for it. So if there are instructions that come with mammals, us animals, there's an instruction manual for it. Basically says, shake it up, okay, but don't shake it up too much. Get it dirty, but don't, not too dirty, right? Put it through stress, put it through the fire. Because if you don't put it through the stress, it'll actually die. And if you put it through too much stress, it'll also die. There is a sweet spot there, and it's all about moving to the sweet spot of finding the amount of stress that you can take at that time, not trying to lift up 200 pounds when you haven't lifted up 5 pounds. But that is the general scheme, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Faulkner in the building says, "Woo! I have godlike strength, and most powerful man in the universe." Shout out to Taboo Smash in the building. Thank you very much for the super chat. You say that makes me think the people who have the couch job or the cushy job, I guess, or something like that, with no high skill are in the weakest position in our society if something crash. Generally speaking, yes, this is just the truth of the ecosystem. This is the truth of your biology. This is the truth of the economy. This is the truth of all that eco stuff. The truth is in the bumping against the stuff. The evolution is in the bumping against the stuff. And when I say truth, by the way, and I do mean truth, because if this consciousness that is not if this body doesn't go out there and try to do stuff with the world that it needs to do, it says, okay, I need food, safety, water. Now I'm going to bump into different things and find what is food, what is safety, what is water, what works, what doesn't work. This is not a priori planning. You don't sit there. Our ancestors didn't sit there and think their way through this. That's not how it works. You don't think your way through it. Oh yeah, it is you can't be brain dead, obviously. But no, you gotta bump your way through it. And then you learn. Oh, I guess that it's not good to eat that bush, or I guess it's, you got to do this, or hey, I guess if you cook the proteins, you can break them down quicker, or hey, whatever it may be, just random behaviors, the ones that survive. That's the idea here as well. That's the idea of training your muscles, the idea of exposure therapy, hitting things with stress, developing your strength through the stress that you take so that you have a strong power base, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, yes, yes. So if we continue, okay, if we continue about this understanding the COO one, in the end, COO makes more money, so longevity isn't always a good thing. Yes, yes. The point is, there's certain dichotomies or trichotomies. You know the triangle about fast, cheap, right? And of good quality. Pick two. That's how life is, right? So there's a trade-off between the efficiency of being a COO. So the point is, if you're a COO type, you need to know that, okay, this cord could get pulled at any second, right? So yeah, so my Les, you make a good point. But if you're a COO, you got to know the boat that you're on. And then if you're the other guy, you got to know the boat that you're on. But over time, one boat is going to be more robust to attack. But if you play your game right, you should be fine either way. Yes, evolution, natural selection, indeed. So to be in a place where you're not pushing yourself goes back to you also expose yourself to the danger that Mr. Tabushmas said here, which is that there are certain places right now where certain jobs, certain positions in society that are not sustainable over time. The more cushioned you are, the less likely you are exposed to reality. The less exposure to reality you get, because it is from reality that you get the stress and the hardship, which is the information, then the less likely you're going to survive. That's it. Because basically, think about it this way, right? If you don't jump at all, your bones atrophy, your muscles atrophy, right? If you jump maybe 3 feet, that's great. That's perfect. If you jump 30 feet, then things break. The only question really is how high should you be jumping? Not a question of whether you should be jumping or not. The only question is how much exposure can you take? How much damage can you take right now? How much strength can you develop? How much of a power base can you develop by the influence that comes with your strength? The only question is what's that right amount? Because sitting back actually leads to death. And again, it is partly the Joe Rogan thing that made me want to do this stream. Because right now, where he's at, okay, it's not that he's free of stress, right? He has White House talking smack about him level stress, right? So the idea is that it's not that you're not gonna have the stress, is at some point you can be as big as to be able to withstand White House level stress. Right? They're throwing bombs at you or whatever. And Spotify is throwing bombs at you. Okay. They got some stuff hitting you over here, but you're going to be able to stand there. Now, if you never stood up, if you were always hidden somewhere, you're not going to be able to stand to it. So you're almost developing your strength in relation to the kind of stress that you can take, which is obviously we've been repeating the same thing over and over again, but it's one of those insights that is so right in front of your face that you forget about it. You know about this, you need to be stressed insight, but you don't understand how all pervading it is, and it's everywhere in your exposure therapy, to your muscles, to your immune system, through how you actually have a sustainable power base, or how the ecosystem or the economy gets information, and how distributed systems tend to work, such as the market. So that is the quick conversation that I wanted to have today, ladies and gentlemen. That is the quick conversation that I wanted to have. So I think that we've interrogated the thesis statement enough that we are comfortable with using it as a working kind of principle, that the best way to actually have sustainable power is to develop a power base based on people whom admire your strengths. And going in there and facing hardship is the only way to develop these strengths. And in the political arena, the hardship comes in doing one of the ways, at least, is to do the politically incorrect thing, not to be such a sheep to the powers that be and all that, so that you can begin to see the slings and the arrows come in, withstand them, grow stronger, and say more. And then at some point, you can still have the number one podcast while the White House is calling for you to be taken down. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about an organization whereby your name precedes you within this particular organization because you are a competent person. Again, when we talked about strength, we talked about those internal qualities that are endemic and can be developed within. It's within the power, or it's within the thing. The strength of the steel is within the steel. There's your strength of character, your strength of will, the strength of your biceps. It's in there. So also within an organization, somebody could be enamored by your strength. Your particular set of skills and your competence could be such that it protects you. Okay? And you don't want to be comfortable. Okay? You want to be called into a White House, or you want to be called by the Senate for interrogation. You want the Senate to call you for interrogation because that means you and preferably not because you're just some kind of puppet of somebody else. Like, oh, let's send our COO. It's like, no, if you're actually been the kind of person that can sustain the kinds of blows that'll get you to the level now where you're talking to the Senate Committee on Judicial Affairs or whatever. Good question. The only word that I can think of is there's a word called isomorphism in math, which is just basically saying that there are certain concepts, maybe from geometry, that can also be observed in other areas as well. Certain parts of number theory, let's say. So when you have certain truths that represent themselves in different aspects of your scientific sojourn, you call it isomorphism. Or you can also call something just fundamental. And when something is fundamental, it's going to show up both in economics and physics and biology because it is fundamental to space, time, and causality, for example, or it is fundamental to how distributed random systems tend to work, right? So, shout out, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see you next time. But remember, develop those strengths. Develop those strengths by facing those hardships. It is the only way actually to have sustainable power. The other kind of power is temporary, not robust enough. So it's not like even it's a choice of whether you should be jumping. The question is, what's the sweet height that you're able to jump from at this time and sustain without exploding, ladies and gentlemen? We're out. Peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Christ feed the multitude with only one loaf of bread. Poor people, there is something for you. Don't let the pressures of the system get up on your head. Poor people, there is something for you. Mankind cares not for his sisters anymore. Still, there is something for you. Written in the book of life, we shall live forevermore. There will be something for you. Rasta works are manifest, Anita blossom and a bloom. Nature always take its course, the tide is rising with the moon. It only take a spark to put the fire to the fuel. What is hidden in the dark shall be revealed so very soon. Tell Pharaoh free the prisoners from the dungeons and the doom. Yep.